Hello everyone, welcome to the second lesson of the course. Now we are on Cinema 4D and just create a new file like this, and now we are going to open the text file. Of course I'm going to share with you this file like this, like as it is right now. You will find it on the course dashboard. And now let's start working with this text file. So if I just save this file, let's change this to text, and I'm going to save it as Illustrator 8. Click OK, and then I go to Cinema 4D, click on Merge, and select the text file. Click OK here, and now I have this text. So it's really cool. We can create the extrude tool here and drop the text. Let me take all the path, and I'm going to right click on connect objects and delete, and move this path into the extrude object. So now I have the extrude and everything looks fine. I can increase the depth. Everything looks fine so far, but you can see that it's really simple like this. It's not a big deal. So I want this to have a nice stroke, and I want these objects to be separated because they are going to be a different color. So if I want a stroke, I can just add a stroke here on Cinema 4D. This is actually a little bit more complex to accomplish. So I'm going to delete this object, and now I'm going to Illustrator again, and now I start messing with this text. So first I want to create the stroke for this whole object. So I'm going to take all of them, and I'm going to choose a different color. Let's make it green. This is just so that we can see the stroke better. Doesn't matter the color now because it will be imported as a path. So I'm going to take all of these objects, and I'm going to give them a stroke here. Let's make this stroke can be like 4 points, and make sure that it's aligned to the outside. Here on stroke, align the stroke, and select align the stroke to outside. Also make sure that the caps are round and the round joint, and now we have this stroke like this. Okay, this is a nice stroke. 4 is more than enough. In fact, we're going to change this to 5 so that we don't have some spaces here on the B. And now I'm going to take all of these objects, and this is how I find it easier to accomplish this effect. I'm going to copy these objects. I'm going to the layers panel, and I'm going to create a new layer. In this new layer I'm going to paste the same objects like this. So on this layer I'm going to delete the stroke, and so I have this object on one layer and this other object here on another layer. Now we can rename this as stroke and fill, and let's select the strokes here, and now let's delete the fill. So you will get something like this. We have the stroke for on one layer and the fill on a different layer. Okay, now you're going to select the stroke, and you're going to object, path, and select outline stroke. Now all of these strokes are converted into shapes. You can see that this is a shape. We can change the color and it will change the color entirely. So we have two sets of shapes, the fill and the strokes, that are now a shape. So far we're good because we have the fill and we're going to be able to extrude the fill, and we have the stroke and we can extrude the stroke into a different depth. But now I also want to separate these objects, the lines and these little dots. So we're going to have to separate all of them. So first, let's turn off this stroke, and I'm going to select only the objects. Let's call them objects. Select all of them and create a new layer and drop them on that new layer. You can call this objects fill if you want, or you can just rename them as you want. Either way, we are not going to use these layers for anything. Turn off the fills and select the objects stroke. Select them all and take them to a different layer, and you can call these objects stroke. So in the end, we will have the objects fill on one layer, the fill of the text, the objects strokes, and the text stroke. So you have 4 different layers. So it's time to save all of them as different files. So first, let's save the objects fill. You can delete all these other layers. Remember that you're just going to delete them for now. You will have only the objects fill, so I'm going to save this file as objects fill. Click on save and make sure that the version is Illustrator 8. Click OK, and that's it for now. Now go back and let's save the fill. You can call this, let's rename this as text fill Illustrator 8. Now go back again and let's save the objects stroke Illustrator 8 again, and finally we will save the text stroke. Alright, so you have now 4 different objects, 4 different files for each one of these layers. So now let's go to Cinema 4D and let's click on Merge, and you can open them one by one. Let's start with the objects fill. Scale to, connect splines, click OK. Now click again on merge. You can see it here. Here is the objects. Click again on merge. This time we're going to select the objects stroke. Click OK again, and you can see that we have the stroke and we have the fill. Okay. Now click on merge again. Select the text fill. And finally, one more time on merge and select text stroke. So we have everything now. We have all of our objects, we have the fill, which is this one, and the stroke for everything. As you can see, all of them are groups, so we need to change them. Let's first bring them here to the top. Alright, we can work like this. You may want to scale them. Just click on T to open the scale tool and increase the size as you want. Okay, like this is fine. So now it's time to make sure that we have only 4 objects and not this insane number of objects, because we have 24 paths here, we have 64 paths on the text field, so we can work like this, because otherwise we would have to create like 1,000 extrude objects, so that would be really silly to do it like that. So I'm going to take the objects field tool, I'm going to take all of the path, right click on them and click on connect objects and delete. Okay, you can separate it from the group and you can delete this object field, and let's rename this as objects field. So we have only one single object instead of having 24 different paths. The same goes here for the objects stroke. Right click, connect objects and delete. Let's rename this as objects stroke and delete the group, and repeat the same process for the fill and the stroke. Grab all the path, right click, connect objects and delete, rename text fill, and erase the group. Now one more time. Text stroke, delete. So now we have only 4 different objects. Now it's time to create the extrude. So first, let's begin with the text fill. You can turn off the rest of the path, and let's just keep the text fill for now. Now go to create, generators, and click on extrude. Now bring the text fill into the extrude object. Now we have a 3D text. Of course, it's really simple right now, so we want to increase this size. You can see on extrude, on object, the object tab, you can see the movement, and you can change the movement if you want the 3D to be horizontal on the x-axis, or if you want it to be on the y-axis like this. But it will be this will be like a 3D effect, but it's really not a 3D, because we're just moving into the y-axis, which is the vertical axis. So of course that wouldn't work. We want to increase the z-axis movement. Let's increase it a lot. That depends, of course, on the size of of all the objects. For me, it works like this. Just make sure that it has enough depth so that we have a nice effect. I'm going to leave it at 225. Alright. Now it's looking better, but it's missing something. Right now it's really plain, it's really sharp, the edges. So I'm going to select the caps tab here on the extrude And right now you can see that we can select the type of caps that these objects have. Right now it's a simple cap. You can see that it has sharp edges, but if we go to start here and select fillet cap, you can see that now we have this nice effect. It like a little rounded effect to the cap. So I'm going to increase the radius to maybe 10 centimeters, and the more steps that you have, the rounder it will be the edge. You can see that if I decrease the steps, it will be like a simple path here. So we can leave it on 3 and maybe increase the radius to 15. Yeah, this is fine. Now make sure that you repeat the same for the end here, because otherwise you can see that this doesn't have the fillet cap. So add the same fillet cap here and the same 3 steps and 15 centimeters. And now we have a nice looking 3D text. Now let's turn on the objects fill, and instead of creating a new extrude and repeating all the same process that we just did, all we have to do is to copy this extrude and paste it with Ctrl C and Ctrl B, and we have a second extrude. We can delete the text fill and take our objects fill and drop it on this new duplicate of the extrude. Now this extrude has all the same features, all the same attributes as the previous one, so it's really easier this way. You can see that we now have the objects with the same exact effect that we just created for the text. Okay, now let's repeat the same process for the objects stroke and the text stroke. Let's begin with the text stroke, which is this one. Create a duplicate of this extrude, delete the objects fill, and take the text stroke into the extrude. Now we have the stroke with the same nice effect of the extrude, but something's wrong here because it's looking really weird. And this happens because the text stroke and the objects on the text fill are on the same place. So I'm going to have to move the text stroke a little bit to the back. I'm going to move here and going to press the letter E to create the move tool, and you can see that we have the y-axis, which is the green one. You can see this icon here. We have the x-axis and we have the z-axis, which is the blue one. Now I'm going to move the text stroke a little to the back, just a little bit to the back, maybe a little bit more. And now I have a nice stroke here, a nice stroke effect here. You can see that it has more volume, so it's really looking very nice. So I'm going to repeat the same for the object stroke. Create a duplicate of the extrude and bring the object stroke into this new extrude. And you can have to do the same thing. And if you want this stroke to be on the same place as this stroke, all you have to do is to go to the text stroke and copy this position, the C position. Now go to the object stroke, which is this one, and paste the same position. So now they are all on the same place. Now we have a really nice 3D text. You can see that it was a little bit more complex, but it's really easy when you know the steps. So now it's time to create some materials for it, create the lighting, create the studio, and make it look really nice for this 3D, because right now if we hit Ctrl and R, of course we can see anything good. We just have the text with the extrude, and that's it. So now it's time to make this into a beautiful typography on 3D. So let's go to the next lesson.